Hey you guys, so if you also saw The Grudge in theaters recently or on Blu-ray if you're watching this in the future, you probably have some questions regarding the villain of the movie, especially because this reboot we got earlier this January had a storyline in which the Grudge curse already existed, so the movie didn't really explain anything. So with that being said, let's get into the video where we'll look at the movie's villain and go over its backstory and origins, as well as who it successfully kills, and some ideas for how you might be able to survive the Grudge's curse a little longer with the rules this movie sets up. And of course, if I get anything wrong or you disagree with something, you can always comment below. But before we get into any of that, we need to take a very quick look at the movie's storyline for context. So the movie opens up with a really basic and still somewhat unclear description of the Grudge. It says that when somebody is killed in a severe act of rage or even grief, the Grudge springs into existence at the crime scene. From there on, the curse is sort of like a piece of gum on the floor, as in that everyone who steps into the location of the crime scene now carries it around with them. After this brief explanation, we follow Melinda Landers, who is in Tokyo in 2004, where she's a nurse at a house where the forces of the Grudge are at play. It's made clear that she has the curse now too, as she sees it on the outside of the house, and only the people who have the curse can see it. She returns back to her family in the United States at 44 Rayburn Drive, where she, driven insane by seeing the evil spirits of the Grudge, murders her husband and daughter before committing suicide. Since the family was killed in a fit of unjust rage, the curse is now at 44 Rayburn Drive, with the Landers family as ghosts replacing the pale woman from the original movies. Shortly after that, a real estate agent named Peter Spencer enters the home. Since he enters the home where the Grudge's curse sits, he is now influenced and haunted by the Landers family ghosts, which leads him to kill his pregnant wife and himself. It's after that, in 2005, that William Matheson and his wife Faith move into the house. Faith Matheson goes on to kill her husband, but she survives and is later committed to a hospital. Then, in 2006, we meet our main protagonist, Detective Muldoon. She's recently widowed and the mother of young Burke, and she, out of curiosity for the Matheson case, enters the house and is now also cursed. Throughout the movie, she learns more about what is happening to her and also finds out about Detective Greco, who was obsessed with the curse of the Grudge, and in 2005, under the influence of the Grudge, tried committing suicide, but survived and went on to be committed into a mental hospital, where he lives for another year. Anyways, spoilers, Detective Muldoon dies at the end by being killed by the ghost of Melinda Landers, and to be honest, I actually really liked her death scene. Not that I enjoyed seeing her killed, but I thought the scene had a lot of tension, a cool twist, and it didn't have one of those obnoxiously loud and cheap jump scares. So I thought that part was done pretty well, honestly. So that's a very brief reminder of what happened in the movie, just so that everyone's memory is refreshed. Now let's get into the unanswered questions of the movie. The Grudge seems to be a fairly prominent part of Japanese folklore, and the story that inspired the movies goes a little something like this. Once in Japan there was a girl named Kayako. Throughout her childhood she was very lonely and had no friends. Even her parents thought she was kind of weird and they mostly kept their distance. The large amount of neglect and loneliness she was exposed to caused her to be depressed. But when she finally grew up, she met Taeko, the only man who seemed to understand and really care about her. Of course, not long after that, they got married and even had a son, and they lived happily ever after. I'm just kidding, this is about to get pretty messed up. One day, Taeko was looking for something in the house. Taeko by accident did find something quite interesting. It was Kayako's diary, in which she wrote about a man she had a crush on. But what Taeko didn't understand is that this diary was really old and back from her childhood, and the two never even did anything. So Taeko, in his mind, puts two and two together and thinks that Kayako is currently cheating on him with the mystery man of her diaries. When Kayako got home later that day, she saw that Taeko was extremely angry. She looked closer and saw Taeko holding a knife. He mercilessly attacked her in front of their son, and even though she tried to escape, she slipped on her own blood and broke her ankle, after which Taeko snapped her neck. She didn't die, however, she was only completely paralyzed, and by the way, her neck being snapped is what caused her to emit that weird clicking sound. But I'm afraid this story's not over. Taeko left her in the attic to rot. The son tried to help her multiple times and was constantly crying. Taeko then killed him too by drowning him in the bathtub. It's believed that Kayako turned into an evil, vengeful spirit that has many powers, such as superhuman strength and teleportation. She went on to strangle Taeko with her hair. And it's Kayako's goal to sort of seek revenge upon people who killed someone else in bad blood. And this story, by the way, is real. No, I'm just kidding, it's just an urban legend. But both the Japanese and American film timelines follow this story. They do, however, change it a little bit so that they can introduce important characters for the movie. So the pale woman we see in the movies is Kayako. It's her we see in the beginning of the film, and she's the one who initiates the curse in this reboot. And her son is the pale boy we see in the originals. So even though the evil spirit does directly kill Detective Muldoon, what the ghosts mostly do in this movie is they psychologically torment their victims. This eventually drives them to utter insanity, to where they start killing their family and finally themselves. And in this movie, the victims of the curse all die after a different amount of time. The Spencer family dies after like 2 or 3 days. Faith Matheson, however, goes on to live for I believe close to a year, if not longer. So does Detective Greco. And I think it's here that there is an opportunity to survive the Grudge's curse a little bit longer and not instantly die. However, this only works for this movie, as the original movies have a slightly different set of rules. And the solution is to commit yourself to a psych ward the instant you start seeing the spirits. What the curse and the ghosts mostly do in this movie is they try to drive you insane to the point where you want to kill yourself. So just go to a psych ward and tell them exactly what you're seeing and the urges you have, and they'll probably put you in a straitjacket or tie you up so that you can't physically kill yourself. And this is actually what happens to Detective Greco. He tries to shoot himself but fails, leaving him utterly disfigured. He then gets put into a mental hospital where he's under constant supervision, and he survives for many months. The same thing goes for Faith. I think she first tries to harm herself by cutting off her fingers, but she survives that, and also later on goes into a hospital where she's taken care of, and she survives for something like a year after the curse got to her. Now the Grudge can still come after you. We saw this with Detective Muldoon, because she, in the end, just gets beat up by Melinda Landers in something that literally looked like some sort of back alley street fight. So the curse can still get you, but Faith and Greco survived it many months longer than Muldoon, and she would have been much better off going to a mental hospital because there, just like Greco, she would have probably survived much longer. So go put yourself into a mental hospital as soon as you start to see the ghosts, because it seems to me that it's either maybe live or definitely die, and I'll take my chances with maybe live. And again, this only works with the rules of this movie. This would not work in the originals because there, it's much more common that the ghosts physically mess with you, but in this reboot, they mostly play the mental game. So that's it for this video. Again, if you have any objections or questions, let me know down below, because it is possible that I missed something, but I still hope that you guys enjoyed this and that I get to see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.